This video is a film study of the three incredible plays that Demarcus Lawrence made in the Seahawks' 26-0 win over the Vikings in Week 13. Obviously, the Vikings were overmatched because of their quarterback situation, even though their defense played to a very high standard and tried to match Seattle's for a portion of the game. I'm going to talk about those three plays here, one of which I agree with Mike McDonald. It's one of the best defensive plays that I have seen all season. It's his forced fumble in the third quarter, but also kind of a referendum of what he's been able to offer this defense in 2025 as a 33-year-old defensive end with incredible rush versatility. I would say he's a scheme fit, but to be honest with you, who isn't? Who isn't a scheme fit for the defense that Mike McDonald and Aiden Durde have put together so far in 2025? But also the activity level that he's playing at, and a couple of NBA basketball comparisons thrown in at some point during the video. This first one, of course, will be Ernest Jones' touchdown return, I think 69 yards to put Seattle up 10-0 late into the second quarter. Seattle's offense was clearly having a ton of trouble with everything that Brian Flores was throwing at them. So Lawrence is going to be spot shadowed pretty much yellow throughout the entirety of this video. Again, I will include some film from prior to Week 13. So it's what I call a cheat play, or some people refer to it as fast to the flats. On a 4th and 1, running back going out to the right. Of course, most quarterbacks are right-handed, reverse pivoting and going in the same direction. That's why I call it a cheat play, because it really puts the defensive end to that side in tremendous conflict. And so what we're talking about here is Demarcus Lawrence. Now, granted, he is unblocked, but your key, in this case the tight end, is stepping down. So untouched, and you've got a running back crossing your face. In this case, it's Aaron Jones. So keep that in mind for a play that I'll show you a little bit later. Ernest Jones is the guy who's going to be the beneficiary of this play. Demarcus Lawrence, clearly a far better athlete, even at 33 years of age, than the quarterback that the Vikings were able to put out there yesterday. But I love the fact that he, whatever he could grab, he clamped onto it. In this case, it was the left arm. Plays over from the standpoint of success fail for the Vikings. Obviously a poor decision to try to get this ball out of there. He's probably just trying to throw it away. This is kind of what Seattle does. I mean, if you're watching this video, you're a Seattle Seahawks fan, first of all, so you know that. But guys just show up where the football is. It's incredible commitment to the scheme and to each other, I think globally, but also just great pursuit. In this case, Ernest Jones, 4th interception of the year, first of this game. He actually got another one later on in the second half. I do want to point out something kind of funny that occurred during this play. It's Leonard Williams and Demarcus Lawrence look like they're trying to celebrate to each other, like high five or something. They misfire. I will tell you what those two remind me of, and this is unfortunate that it's not a Detroit Lions video, because the two players they remind me of is around about the time when I kind of stopped paying attention to the NBA, and that's Ben Wallace and Rasheed Wallace for the Detroit Pistons. Two guys that were, the same age. In fact, they were born like 5 or 7 days apart. These two, Williams and Lawrence, are not that close in age. They're 31 and 33 years old, but they're a huge part of what Seattle did, obviously, yesterday in Week 13, and what they've done, globally throughout 2025. Same play from the all-22 angle. He's spot shadowed in yellow, like I said. Ball is on the left hash, quarterback under center. So a perfect setup to run the running back cheat play or fast to the flats. Jones is going to expand to the flats. I think he gets taken over by Reek Woolen, who's playing spectacular recently, other than the interception/fumble, where he was clearly determined to take that thing back to the house. He passes off Addison's route. When I say he, I mean Reek Woolen passes off Addison's route. So Addison is the number 1. He's the outside receiver, the number 1. And Woolen will pass that off. Did they have an idea that this play was coming? I'm not sure, but Woolen's eyes were definitely in the backfield initially, and then immediately he scans to Addison, releases him to the inside, and Lawrence is on the attack. To me, this looks like incredible recognition, along with the burst, the pursuit, and I'm going to continue to refer to this aspect of his game, he being Demarcus Lawrence, closing speed. He's playing downhill, and I think he understood the play immediately. As an aside, Kobe Bryant eventually takes over this route from Jordan Addison, the one that Woolen kind of passed off, and an amazing play, to be able to corral the quarterback. It's obviously a huge mismatch with Lawrence matched up against the quarterback, they're out in space, and Ernest Jones, the 4th, like I said, 4th interception of the year. To that point, now he's got 5, putting himself in clearly all-pro category. Anyway, here's the two guys, like I said, trying to celebrate, misfiring. Supreme level of confidence for the Seattle defense, not just because they're celebrating in the middle of the play. I mean, they know that their teammates are not going to commit a penalty and bring this thing back, what was going to be an obvious touchdown. I think a little less than 3 minutes left in the second quarter. Seattle finally gets a touchdown. It took the defense to do it. Like I said on Ernest Jones, he missed the game against the Titans. How much of the points that Tennessee was able to get in the fourth quarter, would not have been available if he's around, I'm not sure, but 5 interceptions so far this year, 7 PDs, I think half a sack or maybe 1.5 sacks, 83 tackles, just an unbelievable season, if you ask me, that should put him in at least all-pro discussion. This one will be Lawrence's sack later in the second quarter. In fact, the very next possession, I think, occurs right at the 2-minute warning. So he plays through interruption, and the right tackle, I feel like, actually stabs him a little bit unprompted here, such that Lawrence's rush is interrupted. We're talking about right here, what looks like to be hands to the face, or at least close to it. Interrupts Lawrence's move, but then the violent strike with his right hand that occurs at the same time, which also may be in the face mask of the right tackle, allows him to get upfield. He plays through it. In addition to that, look, if you're facing off against the Seattle defense, or you're a fan of another team and you're watching for this long, there is going to be some kind of game played on the inside, whether it's Murphy, Williams, Hall when he comes back. I mean, there's going to be some kind of game, or Reed when he comes back, played by the D tackles that forces the offensive line to adapt and adapt on the fly. Basically read what the defensive players are doing and then adjust their blocking scheme. And that's one thing that I think that Demarcus Lawrence and all of the defensive linemen for Seattle do, besides the rush versatility. Specific to Lawrence, he can rush as a defensive tackle, a defensive end / outside linebacker, or edge defender, as most people call it. But all of these guys adjust during the play quicker than most offensive linemen, running backs, and tight ends do that are trying to deal with them. He's been brilliant so far, man, in 2025. 5 sacks, I think 16 quarterback hits, which is the most he's had in any season, I think, dating back to 2019. Same play from the all-22 angle, and the reason why I'm going to show this angle doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Lawrence, although, the first time I run it through, feel free to track on him. I don't know what you're supposed to do with this alignment, and then what Seattle plays out of this. Consider this coverage call. Again, it's a 3rd and long, okay? Like I said, the first time I went through here, it's a 3rd and 12. But consider this coverage and the next one I show you in a moment. The presentation for a rookie quarterback or a quarterback who's in that situation is borderline unfair. There's just no way that you can determine what's coming. Murphy will stunt around, and he'll kind of close off any escape path for the quarterback. Keep in mind, this is the yard to gain right here, okay? And watch how Seattle plays this from a coverage standpoint. They drop into a cover 3. And what I mean is I'm talking about these underneath 4 droppers, these 2 being your deep thirds corners and your middle of the field free safety. I get it that some would say that we're trailing in technique here with Amanwari, and I believe this is Woolen up here, but I could be. That's not Woolen, my apologies. I'm not sure who that is. That might be a linebacker. It's 23, but in any case, it's an underneath cover 3 that's at the line to gain. At this point, the play's already over. Demarcus Lawrence has folded to the inside, and he's taken over the quarterback for one of, about a half a dozen sacks for Seattle. I just think that the combination of this coverage and the next one I'm going to show you that occurs in the 3rd quarter is, like I said, borderline unfair. In any case, Seattle's defense forces a punt. With 2 minutes left, they will get another field goal, I believe, to make it 13-0. To this point, Minnesota's offense has had 5 possessions, 23 plays overall, and they've gained 49 yards. This is the play that I believe Mike McDonald has described as one of the best plays that he's ever seen, or maybe he said one of the best of 2025. I would agree. There's incredible execution here from a Demarcus Lawrence standpoint, particularly so because this is a rarely used coverage variation, in my opinion. So I think you've got basically a trail Tampa 2. Tampa 2 is a zone where the corners would generally like sit in the flats. I only have so much screen to deal with, but let's say they would sit in the flats. The two safeties would get deep, split the field in half, which is a little bit of a misnomer because someone, usually the Mike linebacker, would basically be responsible for the deep middle third, which mathematically doesn't work when you talk about halves. This is a variation where the two corners, who I have spot shadowed here in purple, are playing trail man. So they're running underneath of the number one receivers. Everyone else, in my opinion, is playing a Tampa 2. So I'm talking about the relationship of Woolen to this receiver and then the relationship of Job to that receiver. Those guys aren't beat here. Maybe Woolen is lagging further behind than people would want. I suspect Woolen is doing this intentionally, basically to elicit some type of throw. I think this is a trail Tampa 2. And as a result, it gives the outside linebackers a rule, in my opinion. I'm talking about these two OLBs here. So I'll try to explain this the first time through, and if it doesn't make sense, you guys feel free to let me know. Because the flat defenders, or what would be the flat defenders in a Tampa 2, Job and Woolen, because they're trailing with number one, there is no flat defender. As a result, I think this by Lawrence is not random. This is a part of the call. It's kind of like an old school 50 defense where the outside linebacker has a rule, no running back crosses your face without you knocking the crap out of him. Basically, make him pay for trying to run onto that space. That's absolutely what Demarcus Lawrence does here. He chips him. Actually, that's more violent than a chip. Tries to take his head off, and then Lawrence actually falls down back on the other side of the 50. So he's back on like the negative 43 as far as his hands go. Completion to Jones out in the flats. Keep in mind, the line to gain here is the positive 30 or positive 29, in terms of if you're relating it to the Vikings offense. The positive 29 would be positives would be anything beyond the 50. Negatives would be anything prior to reaching midfield. In any case, Lawrence, after chipping, trying to destroy the running back, retraces his steps. For me, it's the rarity with which outside linebackers in the NFL are asked to do this. Bill Belichick's defenses in the Patriots' heyday, their Super Bowl runs, all of them, they were known for this, in my opinion. It was kind of hearkening back to his days as a Giants defensive coordinator under Bill Parcells in the 80s and the 90s, chipping running backs, releasing out in the backfield. This is not used as often in this day and age. Edge defenders typically want to rush the passer, and that's almost what their coaches ask them to do 100% of the time. This is a dedication to scheme that I think I maybe have seen Seattle use 3 or 4 times total in 2025, and I suspect that's what Mike McDonald meant when he said it's one of the best plays I've ever seen. Not just because of the physicality with the running back, and not just because of the hustle to go force the fumble by Aaron Jones, but because of how rarely he asks the outside linebackers to accomplish that task. Basically, how rarely they're actually told, hey, you have a rule, no running back may cross your face. And that's because of the trail nature with the corners, which Seattle doesn't use a ton of anyway. It's a 3rd and long, 3rd and 14, so it makes sense. You have the luxury of doing that. Hopefully I explained all this in a way that does some credit or justice to what I think Demarcus Lawrence had to do on this play. It wasn't just as simple as, oh, he happens to run into Aaron Jones. To me, this is a scheme, trail Tampa 2, where it's kind of like an old school mentality. Like I said, an old school 50. Watch him veer off on his rush. But while he's doing so, he's got eyes on the quarterback to the inside. Maybe he's reading screen, and that's why he's doing this. And maybe this is random. I don't think so. The combination of the trail technique by the outside corners and this, to me, makes me suspect that this is 100% scheme, and he did it with no hesitation. Again, I could be, way off on this, but in other the point is, in other coverages, he wouldn't do that at all. And then this part, for me, what comes into play is something that I think McDonald said. Maybe it was during training camp. It was early in the season when I heard it. It was something along the lines of, he's a great practice player, or maybe he's a great drill player, someone who doesn't take any snaps off in practice. This shows up. It shows up right here with him chipping Jones and then converging, retracing, if you will, back down the field to force the fumble. The level of execution, the level of violence that you get with this whole defense, but specifically with Demarcus Lawrence, it's something that a lot of NFL offenses, they just can't withstand. That play to me is the on-field, in-game manifestation of drills that you do. I'm sure there's various strip drills that they do in practice, probably every day. I think Mike Macdonald's statement is more so not just about the strip, more so about what Demarcus Lawrence executed in the first 2 seconds of the play as opposed to the final 2. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. Feel free to let me know what you think of it in the comment section. His closing speed, okay? I'm going to refer back to some other film here to offer kind of a summary judgment at the end. I think this is one of the best free agent signings for the money that occurred this past year, one that got some criticism because of his age. I think he'll turn 34 next April, and I believe he's under contract for the 2026 season. At this point, as a Seattle fan, you're obviously happy about that. So this is a quarter, half. Half field with Bryant to the field, the wide side of the field, the bottom side of our screen. And then I think that's Love up top there, could be Okada. And then Job are going to be your quarter field defenders, quarter, half, or what a lot of people refer to as a cover 6. Drake Thomas is getting in the window of where Trevor Lawrence is trying to throw the football. And our guy, Demarcus Lawrence, I think is just observing, or reading the play on the run. So if Lawrence was to try to escape here, then Lawrence would match it, Demarcus Lawrence. That's not what happens, because I think you've got a great rush upfield by Leonard Williams through the B gap. And Demarcus Lawrence is able to fold underneath. I'll actually give you the end zone angle. I think this is a day where they had 7 sacks or whatever. The reason why I'm showing you this one and a couple of others is because of the closing speed that Demarcus Lawrence has. This is Leonard Williams. He's going to go through the B gap. Like I said, this is a quarter, half delineation post-snap, and I think there's a lot of intricacies to the Macdonald scheme. Macdonald and Durde. He's the defensive coordinator, but I think we all know that a lot of this is coming from Macdonald. Durde has a role. How much of a role he had in signing this guy who he coached in Dallas, I don't know, but it's certainly working out in Seattle's favor. To me, he's observing at this point. And so it's not just the versatility of execution, it's the versatility of awareness to me. Watch the closing speed once I unpause this 2 or 3 times. It's borderline unfair for quarterbacks. Some of the less athletic quarterbacks, I should say, to have to try to get away from all of the jackals that Macdonald and Durde put out there from a pass rush standpoint. And it's the decisiveness for Demarcus Lawrence across that versatility. It's how decisive and quick he makes his reads and reacts that really impresses me the most. One more play from that win over the Jags down on the road in Week 6. This is 7th possession. Seahawks are up by 14. So the 4-man rush schemes. First of all, it allows you to use 7 in coverage. From a simplistic standpoint, that's advantageous for the defense, obviously. But also, even against the athletic quarterbacks. Remember Jaden Daniels, they were still rushing for that night. I know Daniels isn't nearly as healthy as he was in 2024, his rookie season. What I like about this one for Demarcus Lawrence is as he's getting upfield, he identifies the counter scheme, the guard pulling and the halfback wrapping. And I suspect that mid-play here, again, I'm choosing plays to use, I suspect that he's thinking this could be screen. And that's why he holds up for a moment. It's not a screen. Byron Murphy's actually getting upfield, forcing the quarterback to redirect, and then the pursuit, the closing speed, the awareness. Great eyes for Demarcus Lawrence. It's all there. In my opinion, for him to be playing the number of snaps he's playing per game, they're at the right number. Him and Uchenna and Nwosu have been, really the combination of those two has been a revelation for what they've been able to put forth statistically in 2025. Lawrence also has run game versatility. I've covered this play multiple times in different videos. I actually did one, I think, last week or maybe a week and a half ago on the goal line scheme that Mike Macdonald is using. I did it after the loss to the Rams. If you haven't checked it out, it's my best attempt to try to explain what they're doing defensively and how they're able to be so great in some of these short yardage situations. So Leonard Williams and Demarcus Lawrence are being asked to utilize the same technique. They're lined up inside shade of the tackles, what a lot of people would refer to as a 4-eye. And what they're doing is they're swimming over the top. So they're basically getting to C gap and clearing up B gap for the Mike linebacker. In this case, it's Ernest Jones IV. So by stepping or stunting to the outside, both of these guys have safeguarded, I guess you could say, the B gap such that Ernest Jones IV is able to fit there no matter what. Sometimes it's not Ernest Jones IV. Sometimes, when he's injured or whatever, it could be Drake Thomas, Tyrese Knight. The point here for me, and to the reason I included this one, is because at the same time that Demarcus Lawrence plays faster, quicker, and more agile than a 33-year-old guy, he also plays bigger, stronger, and more sturdy against the run than someone who's 6'3", 255. You got a very hybrid nature there, if you ask me. He's someone that no matter what situation McDonald and Durday put him in, he knows how to execute it. Basically, not only do you have statistical production being put forth, but positional versatility that, if you ask me, allows you to keep the same players on the field pretty much no matter what the situation is, especially at the defensive line's position, I should say. 4th and 1, the very next snap. Again, this is the home win. Very disappointing day for the offense, somewhat similar to yesterday against the Vikings. But look, Houston defense may be, one of the best 2 or 3 in the NFL. This is 4th and 1, very next snap, like I said. He's going to stunt or swim to the outside of the left tackle. Leonard Williams stunts or swims to the outside of the right tackle. And I do want to point this out. I love the combination of Nwosu and Lawrence being lined up on the same side. Talking about these two here. Two guys that so far in 2025, they've forwarded 11 sacks. I know this is a run play here. They've forwarded 11 sacks. Last season in 2024, total, those two combined for 4. Finally, this is going to be one of the 2 touchdowns he scored against Arizona. And the reason why I'm going to include this one, I actually kind of mentioned it that week or after the game when I talked about it or tried to break it down. His commitment to the scheme, to whatever he's asked to do, I believe it's being rewarded here. I don't know if it's, the universe, God, whatever you believe in. And so what I'm talking about is Tyrese Knight's going to force the fumble. They're overload blitzing the weak side. This tight end / offensive lineman is going to kind of motion across. And so Seattle's in the perfect call once he vacates that space. Once he goes to the other side, I'm talking about 68. Once he goes to this side, they've got 4 potential rushers. Knight, Lawrence, I think Amanwari, and Bryant. They got 4 potential rushers, and the Cardinals only have 3 guys to block it. They've got left guard, left tackle, and running back. And watch what Lawrence does here to clear this up, to ensure, I should say, that this gets cleared up. It looks like he's just trying to swim and escape for a moment, all right? And then we know Tyrese Knight knocks the ball up in the air. Lawrence is the beneficiary, right? Let's pull this back a little bit and just go slow through here. Watch the way that Lawrence does this to ensure that basically a 3-on-1 is created. So when I say 3-on-1, I'm talking about Knight, Amanwari, and Bryant against this running back. I guess technically 3-on-2. My apologies. Bad math there. But watch the right hand here by Lawrence. The small little details, in my opinion, is what kind of opens things up a little bit. In my opinion, he's trying to get the guard to commit to blocking him by that move with his right arm. And then that creates the 3-on-2, the aforementioned 3-on-2, balls in the air. All of these guys execute everything that they're asked to do. So it could have just as easily been Leonard Williams, Uchenna Nwosu, whoever. There's so many guys performing. I don't want to say higher than their talent level. That's not the way I want to infer this, but let's do it this way. They're performing higher than perhaps their previous team might have predicted before 2025. Now, in the case of Uchenna Nwosu, he had played well in Seattle previously. Health and availability matter, right? Obviously, they're the biggest determining factor. In my opinion, coaching and willingness to be unselfish within the scheme matter just as much. Along with the 5 sacks and the 1 forced fumble that occurred yesterday, I'm talking about 5 sacks globally during the season, 2 defensive touchdowns, 16 quarterback hits. if you look at Demarcus Lawrence's production throughout his career, that's in line with possibly being named to the Pro Bowl. The problem for him and for a lot of guys on Seattle's defense is they're in competition with each other. They're not just in competition with each other for like possible Pro Bowl designation, Lawrence and Nwosu, but also during the context of an individual play. You've got so many guys that swarm after the football. It truly is, if you ask me, a perfect storm in that they're competing with each other to try to get to the quarterback and make plays for each other. Lawrence has rush versatility, scheme versatility. The run defense is on point as well. I tried to show you as many examples as possible of all the things that I'm bringing up to, I don't want to say prove it, but to give you ammunition if someone out there online or social media is talking about Demarcus Lawrence and his season being a fluke at 33 years of age. I believe he signed for 2026. I guess I should have looked that information up before recording this video. He's smart, aggressive. He's very quick. You have to be to play on this defense. You have to be quick and decisive. At this point in the year, he's got 16 quarterback hits. You've got to go all the activity level and the accumulation is what I'm referring to by talking about quarterback hits. 16 quarterback hits. You have to go all the way back to 2019 to find another year where he exceeded 15 quarterback hits. That's because of availability. But I think it's also because of coaching and his commitment to what he's asked to do. Played 427 snaps so far in 11 games. So by my math, right around 37 reps or snaps per game, 39 snaps per game, excuse me. And I think that's the right number for him and for the depth that this Seattle Seahawks defensive line has. When they get Jarran Reed back, presumably, before the end of the regular season, they'll become even more dangerous. My final point, the thing that I enjoy watching about him the most is that he doesn't just celebrate for himself. Like so many guys, almost all, in fact, on Seattle's defense, they celebrate for each other with the same level of tenacity and the same level, the same demonstration of energy output, I should say. In any case, if you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comment section, number one. If you're unaware, likes and comments really drive, and any type of engagement really drives, the videos to be exposed to a larger audience and helps us as content creators. This was one that I knew I wanted to do. After watching last night's game, I didn't get a chance to do a reaction video. We're still traveling home from the Thanksgiving holiday. Finally, if you think other Seahawks fans would enjoy this film study look at Demarcus Lawrence, even though it's an extended one, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.